This is Across Divides, a series of stories and experiences from communities across the island of Ireland as they meet shared challenges and consider opportunities for collaboration. Find out more at icommunityhub.org.
My name is Susie Can, and in this episode, we're going to be exploring the challenges and the opportunities of social enterprises all across this island. There are many new areas that are open for cooperation, and to discuss all of this, I'm joined today by Maeve Monaghan, the CEO of Now Group, a social enterprise that supports people with barriers to employment and learning into the workforce. Also by Rosemary Kunene, founder of Dignity Partnerships, a social enterprise that promotes self-employment and provides support for people who are or who have been in the direct provision system in the Republic of Ireland. She's currently undertaking a Master's in Cooperative Studies and Social Enterprise in Cork. And also by Martin Ward, General Manager of Bounce Back Recycling, a social enterprise that provides opportunities for people facing barriers to employment in traveller communities. We might start by talking a bit about is that one of the key challenges, that people face barriers to employment, and why Maeve does social enterprise model work for addressing that?
Yeah, well, thanks, first of all, Susie, for inviting me today. I'm just delighted to be part of this conversation. Anything that's about social enterprise interests me, and I really do see the opportunity for collaboration across the island of Ireland. I think barriers to employment is a fundamental thing, particularly, our organisation was born in the north of Ireland, and we're now expanding into the Republic of Ireland as well. But we have such a big gap between the need for people to fill jobs and a significant number of people who are economically inactive. And I think that the challenge around that is that it's different languages that are being spoken, and the gap is so wide, and the level of understanding isn't there between the two parties, I suppose. And I think social enterprise provides a really, really good bridge between employers who need people, and they need really, really good people, and really good people who can do a good job but maybe don't have the skills, experience, or the confidence that's needed to understand that they have the same right as anybody else to have the access to those jobs. And I think an organisation like ours has been spending over 20 years, breaking down a lot of the myths, particularly for people who have disabilities. I've been in this game long enough now to have had really depressing conversations in the early days about the capabilities of people with disabilities. I would have been asked, well, we've as you know, we have Love Catering, which is one of our social enterprises, is a catering business, and I would have been asked questions like, well, could somebody with a learning disability really work in a cafe? Or would I really want somebody with a disability making my food? And I was astounded at the time that was the kind of questions I was being asked. But I think organisations like ours are breaking a lot of those myths down so that people understand that the best businesses are reflective of our whole community. And the more inclusive and diverse businesses are, the better it is for business. So I see social enterprises as being that innovative spark that brings really good people together with businesses who need really good people. And I just see lots of possibility to do more of that in the months and years ahead.
Fantastic. Rosie, breaking down myths, I wonder in, Dignity Partnership, when you first started, was there something that echoes what Maeve's talking about?
Yes, it definitely does. And I should also say, like, Maeve, thank you so much for inviting me here. And I was actually interested in the way Maeve was speaking about bringing people together to solve a problem. And that's exactly the same thing that Dignity Partnership does. There is this myth that goes, or people would think people living in direct provision, they are just a burden to the state. And also, most of them would have barriers to employment, yet they do have a certain skill that they can be self-employed. but then the supports are not there. So Dignity Partnership is there to break the myth and also to provide that network. Because as an individual like myself, if I want to set up a business as someone who is just new in the country, it's almost as impossible, because I need the social networks, I need the business networks as well. So Dignity Partnership is there to provide that access to the wider Irish business community, and also to encourage and motivate people to say, if you have this skill, you can do it. You don't have to sit back and say, oh, I cannot get employed, yet you have a certain skill that can actually bring you an income. So what do we need? We just need to support people. We just need personal development. We just need enterprise development, and also guidance on how things are done in Ireland. Because coming from where I come from, if I want to start maybe a snack business, I just start making the business and knock on my neighbor and start selling. But here is a different story. There's a lot that I need to do. There's a lot of regulations. So people need to know what regulations are there for them to go into business. So yeah,
Fantastic.
I hope that
Yeah,
answers you.
absolutely
Yeah.
does. Martin, where did your social enterprise fit into that?
Yeah, well, I suppose the driving force to establish and bounce back recycling was the creation of employment for members of the traveller community, because there's been a consistently high rate of unemployment of 80% plus, even during boom times in Ireland. And we would like the majority of that comes from the root cause, which is racism and discrimination faced by the community. So we said that's a big challenge for any organisation to take on. So while we were going after the societal change, how could we utilise the skill that was within our own community? So we took a step back and said, well, what can we create internally? And that's what led us to looking at the social enterprise model, because there's been so many reports done on the community, and we're more than just stats. This was a real life project, creating jobs, bridging the gap, and delivering environmental impacts that, like, was good for the whole of Irish society. So you can bridge that gap. So, initially we didn't even think about the environmental impact, but it was those barriers to work. And then I suppose in 2017, the Community Foundation of Ireland did a study in Ireland, and only 17% of non-travellers said they would employ a traveller. Yes, the myth is out there that travellers don't want to work, but when you have that little amount of opportunities, that really turned it on its head. It wasn't blaming the community for not wanting to work. It was suddenly, well, actually, there was no opportunities. So we have worked and supported people then to move into mainstream employment. That's still quite slow because of the bias and the issues and stuff. But, we would say to the staff, we'll do it one mattress at a time. That's what's within our control. And to date, we've recycled 70,000 mattresses, which really has opened a number of doors for I suppose, for bounce back, but more importantly, for community members to move on and progress and challenge the myth that travellers don't want to work.
So we've kind of started with busting myths, but also that agenda of inclusion seems to be weaving through the conversation. Do you think you face, learning from each other or listening as we've begun, do you think you face this similar, or what are the differences in those barriers to inclusion? Like, Martin, you're talking about something very historical, as you say, multiple studies. Is that similar to the historical issues for disability?
I'd say there is similarities across a lot of them, and I think sometimes the people can be very selective. So if you look at the 9 grounds as protected under the Equal Status Act in Ireland, some might say, well, we might, for instance, we might just take like the women from there, or people with disabilities, or travellers, and we're advocating, well, no, it should be everyone across the 9 grounds. If you're inclusive and you want a diverse in workforce, you need to include everybody. So it's not just hand picking or cherry picking from the different groupings. That's so important. Like that, it shouldn't be allowed to happen, even for people that advocate or support, and that it should be right across the board for all communities. That the workforce, whether like if it's 100 in the job and travellers make up 1%, well, at least one of those jobs should be travellers. Same with people with disabilities. If they make up 10% of the workforce in that company should disabilities. or asylum seekers, or to get the right mix and balance that actually reflects Irish society now, as we stand today.
Yeah, I agree, Martin, and I think, you know, there, everybody's needed. I think in today's society, particularly in the workforce, there are so many gaps in employment, and every business I speak to says, when I say, one of the questions I always ask them when I come to meet them, they're a little bit nervous because they think I'm coming asking for something. And, I've been involved in this area for long enough to know, it used to be that nearly, oh, go on, would you give one of our participants a job, please? And to get going. And I've moved away from that completely now. So, what we would be saying is, where are you hurting? Where is your absolute pain point? And every business, now, particularly in Northern Ireland, there's lots of conversations about Brexit along with everything else and supply chains and whatever. But the main thing that businesses talk about is, the need for staff at all levels, the turnover, the cost of recruitment. So therefore, we're coming with a solution to that. And I think it's right. You can't just pick and choose in relation to that. You need everybody, and you need everybody at every level. But what I tend to find with businesses is they're afraid. They're afraid of doing it wrong, getting in trouble. They kind of just, instead of doing anything, in the fear of doing wrong, they don't do anything. And I would say, you need to get going, you need to start somewhere. But once you get started, that's not enough. You have to continue. And that idea of inclusion and diversity should be right across the organisation, just like Martin says. But I think mindsets are changing, but they're being driven by the need to look elsewhere for people to fill employment jobs. And that's where the opportunity comes for social enterprises at the minute to do a really, really good job where we can't be done without. And then to place really brilliant people so that businesses start to realise that our participants and the people we support are as good, if not better, than everybody else that's in the workplace. And I think that's the feedback we're getting from businesses. It's good for business. It works for them.
Yeah, I actually, just to add on what has been said, even like for Dignity Partnership, we actually look into two ways to say our members can actually be self-employed in a company where you're working, under the contract. And also maybe like if you're in the catering business, you're also given that opportunity. I don't know where you can go and cater for an event. And we see there is that I think Maeve has mentioned, say there is that you know um, some of the companies would have the fear of the unknown. If I'm going to engage this particular person, are they knowledgeable, are they going to deliver? But then the question is, how would you know if they can deliver if you don't give them a chance?
Yeah.
Often you see people would be taken in as internship. That one, you see a lot of companies, oh, okay, we want diversity. Oh, bring in, you have people from this background. Okay, they can go on a 6 months internship. All right, fine. I've gone through that 6 months internship. What is next after that? I'm back to the same, I'm back to square one. So for us, we say if you take people for internship, it doesn't have to be a paid internship, even if it's for free. But then after the 6 months, try to see if you cannot take them, maybe signpost them somewhere else where they can work, maybe even as self employed on a contract.
And social enterprises, all of you are also setting them up as trading businesses. So one of the things that I've often heard in the social enterprise sector is people saying, we have to do all the things that a business has to do, and then we do all this extra. So it's business plus, 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 plus. What are you finding are those plus, plus, pluses, and are you finding that that's something your trading activity supports? Are there other barriers to getting the plus, plus, plus into the social enterprise? Martin, or any of you? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry,
Maeve.
well, I have this question a lot, and I actually discuss it quite a bit internally as well. And what I would always say is that's why we're a social enterprise and not a business. If we didn't have to do the plus plus plus, we would just be a business. So we have to start with that premise that we don't have a bottom line target, although it's not, we're not doing this for shareholders. We all have a mission, and the mission is the plus plus plus. But I think that said, there's a challenge in relation to be able to deliver all of the support that's needed, because it's not like, if it was really easy for one of our participants to get a job, they would already have it. There's a support, there's a pre-employment piece, there's a support to get into a job piece, and then there's an after-employment piece. And one of the reasons why Now Group is so successful in that, I just got a stat today where our team has supported 102 people with disabilities into jobs this year. So that's from April last year to end of March. So really good success rate there, and it kind of busted a lot of the myths about how many disabled people could get into work. But that doesn't stop when that job starts. That support is required to be ongoing, and it's not just for the participant, it's for the employer as well, because the breakdown doesn't happen the day after interview or the first day they start. It might happen a week or a month after that. And particularly, well, I suppose for a lot of groups, but certainly for our participants, their disability doesn't go away. It's a constant thing. So and things that might be challenging one day might not be challenging the next. So I think that ongoing support, how that's funded, we have a mix in our organisation of generated income and funding for some of those support programs. But I think that's what makes us special, and it's a challenge. There's a never-ending balance between the kind of social mission and the need to drive profit. But that's what makes us a social enterprise. And I always say to people, you're either up for it or you're not.
Yeah. Martin, are you up for it?
That's it, I think, and I think it's what keeps us going. And a lot of people that's involved in this sector, it is about the plus, plus, plus. You know what I mean? It's just like, I remember saying to somebody once, unless you really cared about the mission that you're trying to drive and the change that you're trying to create, you probably wouldn't be in this sector. Do you know what I mean? Because while there is lots of challenges and barriers, like there's so much rewards as well. Like for me, I'm a member of the traveller community. We've created 16 jobs in Bounce Back. That's like 1,600 jobs in the non-traveller population. That means that much because we're only 1%. And the fact then that we actually can bust a myth and say, well, sorry, we've recycled 70,000 mattresses. And we would always say, like, we're reclaiming our community space as the original recyclers on the island, linking it back to the tinsmiths. So travellers were in use, and when we look at turning metal into buckets, and then the plastic drove that trade away, and now we're trying to do away with the plastic again, where if we to invest in, the circular economy from a community level, and lots of minority groups, we'd be so far along the agenda of the circular economy now. So yeah, I think there is lots of barriers, but there's like the rewards offset them then, so very positive space to be in.
Yeah. And Rosie, you're doing a master's in social enterprise and cooperative studies, and I'm curious how much your educational journey, as for you yourself, and how that has made you a bit of a leader within the space of social enterprise in Ireland, and how your understanding from either a global perspective, like you said, the changes that you would have encountered coming to Ireland. What are you seeing in terms of opportunities in the sector that you're seeing, that you're learning about, that are really, I guess, as people, as Martin and Maeve was saying, there's something, there's a lot of positives in being engaged in, working here in this way rather than working in business.
Well, okay, that's a bit difficult one for me, but I should say the lessons that I'm learning from my studying with UCC is actually the driving force to the work that I'm doing with Dignity Partnership, and there is loads of potential for social enterprises here in Ireland. All Ireland, and the kind of study that we do, the teachings that they give us, is something that I would recommend that every social enterprise should learn about, especially on how to market yourself as a social enterprise. Like it's been said by Martin and Maeve about the challenges. there used to be some time that myself, I'll be like, you know what, I am giving up on this. But then when I'm doing my assignment, I learn something and I'll be like, no, actually, I can implement this in my work. And at the end of the day, for me, it's not even studying. It's like I am doing something. I mean, it's something that I go back for my work to say, okay, I'm stuck here. How can I solve this problem? For us, when we started off Dignity Partnership, we didn't really have much support, much funding, and we were supporting people that were unable to actually pay for any service or any training that we were doing. But we kept on calling ourselves as a social enterprise. Although if you look into the definition of a social enterprise, you find that we were not falling under it. But we stuck to that. And like my colleagues have mentioned, to say, it's the work that you do, the plus plus that motivates you. For me, it was hearing the testimonies from the people that we're supporting. Hearing someone saying, you know what, Rose, that workshop came at a very good time. I thought I was gonna give up. I thought that was the end of me. But the way you gave the workshop, you're giving me hope that I can actually do my business in this country. That would actually give me, energize me to say, okay, I better just, move forward. And then there was one module that we did on governance, and I would be there looking at, my governance structure, and I'm like, I think I'm missing something here. So I need to push on that. So anyway, just to round it up, I would say these social enterprise courses, I think I would recommend that is something that needs to be taken up by almost all the universities or the colleges, just to promote it and also encourage other people to go into this social enterprise sector.
Yeah, interesting. Um, and the supports, like you were just saying, Rosie, the supports around starting up a social enterprise. So Maeve, you've been there for, you said, 20 years. Martin, I
Yeah.
know you're in existence a while too. For new entrants, for people trying to get into the sector anywhere on the island, do you think that the opportunities are there? Or and I something, I know it's a phrase that I've talked with Rosie before about the idea of being in the community that and of the community that you're trying to help, and understanding that. Or there's a phrase that I've heard from a business school, actually talking about the idea of heropreneurs, kind of coming out, not deeply embedding yourself in the issues that are being experienced by the people that you're helping, like more apprenticing yourself to the community you want to help. How is the sector evolving in your experience? How do you think the supports are going to be there for really meaningful scaling? We talk about scaling in social enterprise a lot, but scaling the whole sector on the island.
This is a real passion point of mine. Sorry, Ruth, go ahead.
It's okay. Okay, I wanted to say, yeah, in my own experience, the support is there, but there is more to be done. So personally, we've received support from the Social Entrepreneurs Island, and there's the Social Impact Island that have been supporting us. But there is a lot of like giving knowledge. But then once you get that knowledge, where is, the real support, the finance side of things for one to start? I know there are other bigger organizations that are supporting social enterprise to start off. But the challenge that we found ourselves as Dignity Partnership was that we are applying for the funding, and then we're being told, where's your traded income? You need to show your traded income for you to qualify as a social enterprise. So how do we start trading when we don't even have the capital to start trading? So for us, we just had to say, you know what, let's just do with what we have and move at a very, very slow pace. So I would say the support is there, but there's need, especially for grassroots and social enterprise that are just starting. there's more support that is needed than just providing the trainings that are being given out there.
Yeah. Maeve, do you want to continue?
Yeah, I would agree. I think in relation to startup, lots of advice about how you set one up, what the governance models are. And, a number of years ago, there wasn't even that. So that's really good progress. North and South, there's definitely really good foundations there with the social enterprise networks and some funding that comes through on that. And I think all of that's good, but I have seen so many business plans that add up at the bottom but are not realistic. So, real honest conversations with people about what is viable and what's not has to happen. Just because it's a nice to do doesn't mean it's going to be a sustainable business. I see it a lot. Particularly with community cafes, for instance, where everybody looks at the loaf model and they think, oh, we all want to have a social enterprise cafe, and I say, well, do you really? Because it's really hard to make money and it's really hard slog, and that is not the solution to all of it. You have to work really hard at it. And I think there's an element of challenge that's needed back to start up social enterprises to see, where is the longevity of this? Where is the commerciality of it? But also then when there is a really good idea, where is the working capital? Most social enterprises can't go to a mainstream bank and ask for a loan. That even the understanding of the model of social enterprise is a challenge for most institutions. I know there is an organisation called Community Finance Ireland that works north and south, and they have a particular interest in community and third sector organisations, and they understand the model more. But there's work to be done there, and I always say, just give me a bit of money and let me get on with it. I know what I'm doing. We could definitely get it done. You're talking to entrepreneurs, and it's a different conversation with an entrepreneur than it is with somebody who's running a funded project. And that's not to say, because we run both, so I understand that. That's not to say one's better than the other, but you have to trust entrepreneurs as well and let them get on with it. I would say the other part on it, Susie, is you're absolutely spot on. Lots and lots of conversation about scaling, but no real challenge and pathway about how that can happen. We've done quite a bit of scale. We would be seen to be, I suppose, a bigger social enterprise with some of the areas that we have, but very, very little support out there for organisations who want to go from the £1 million turnover to five, for instance. I know that can sound, I said that in another forum. People thought, well, like, you can't be greedy. And I think, this is a business. We have to scale. We need significant scale to be able to deliver the mission that's needed. And we have to not be afraid to say that and be okay with making profit and wanting to make more money. So I think, early start, definitely more of a challenge, more bridge in finance, more understanding of social enterprise by funded finance organisations. But then that next stage of scale, we are going to need significant scale to deliver with, to deal with the issues that are coming down the line for our most marginalised communities. And the bigger social enterprises are, the better. Um, and we need as much of that as possible to be able to deliver on missions.
Martin, are you finding that ambition is there in the social enterprise networks that you might be part of? Do you think that the idea that, you've mentioned your output from employment terms, but you're also, the 70,000 mattresses, is there this niche that social enterprises are beginning to occupy and they could do even more?
Yeah, I think for sure. I think that space is starting now to, that change and looking at the scaling. And I think if there's an opportunity to scale, there's a willingness within the social enterprises to do that. But again, it's the funding to scale, because we're all there about the impacts we're creating. So we would say, a lot of social enterprises, are set up for social or environmental or the societal change. And we would say we deliver the hat trick of those within our social enterprises. So we are starting to scale now. So we're looking by 2024 to have 30 travellers employed in the project and recycle 100,000 mattresses a year. So we are working with Rethink Ireland on that, and we get support from the Department of Rural and Community Development for staffing. And it was great that in 2019 we finally had a strategy for social enterprises, for the first time ever, which, and more funding, and there's more talk about social enterprises since that, at least. But it is challenging for startup social enterprises. And I think one of the challenges as well is that in the South, we don't get any funding through the business support. So the Department for Trade and Business don't support social enterprises. So we need to get change on that, because that's maybe where the scale and the funding comes, through the Enterprise Ireland's or the local enterprise offices. But we're not actually seen as a business, because I think at times, social enterprise was nearly seen as a charity, and you kind of go and please give us this or please give us a job, and we're kind of saying, no, them days are gone. We actually have a solution for your problem, and now it's time to engage on a different platform as such. And because it is risk, and a lot of these are started by community projects and stuff like that for the right reasons, but it's trying to get that balance, as Maeve said. And then, for the sector to realise that profit isn't a nasty word. It's actually what you do with the profits is the most important part of it, So it's, we generate money, we reinvest it in other areas. So we partly funded 24 travellers doing a level 7 community development diploma with a project we ran with NUI Galway, so that was delivering another impact outside of employment. That was an educational impact. So there's lots you can do if you can even generate the surpluses to reinvest back in. But it's kind of I think it's a conversation that needs to be had in the sector as well, because similar to me, if I came from a business background, you're trying to balance that with the community stuff. I think I would say at times this sector softened me a bit, but you can't, when you see it's not, then you soon realize it isn't only about the bottom line. There's so much more than just the profits. It's, the impacts, talking, the stories, the difference it makes to the staff, their families, the community, So, but I think there's a lot more that could be done, but I think it's moving in the right direction for sure.
And you're saying there, Martin, it's that in the Republic of Ireland there was a strategy published in 2019. Maybe you operate now in the Republic of Ireland and in Northern Ireland. You started out in Northern Ireland. I'm curious about the lessons we can learn from each other, since the sector was established in the North, had different legal forms, all the differences that were there. Do you think that if we looked at social enterprise on an all-island basis as a sector, I mean, whatever about as the government departments and policies, but the sector itself cross-collaborating, have you seen things that brings to the table, I guess?
Yeah, I haven't seen many of them yet, but I think I've sensed some people open to the conversation, and I think that's always a good place to start. So we would have moved, being what you would call, well, what I say, like a relatively big fish in a small pond in Northern Ireland, and then look down to the Republic of Ireland and think, "Flip, it's just so much bigger, and we're not known." And we had a really good lead in, because one of our social enterprise initiatives, Jam Card, just went viral, rolled the whole way through the Republic of Ireland, picked up by the Transport Network, picked up by Lidl Ireland, all of the banks. So that kind of got us an introduction there, which was great. So when I went to start oh yeah, yeah. Well,
I know what a jam card is, but maybe people listening in don't know what a jam card is.
When I talk about our different brands, I say we have a family of brands, and I have different explanations for them all. And I call Jam Card the Blue Eye Boy. It's the one in your family, that the person in your family that everybody knows. And anytime I go somewhere, they say, "Oh, are you related to Jam Card?" So people might not know about Now Group, they might not know about Loaf, they might not know about our consultancy business Gauge, but most people have heard or seen a Jam Card. And that's a card that's been designed by people with intellectual disabilities and autism. And JAM means just a minute. It's short for just a minute. And it's a card that can be used, a card or an app that can be used on public transport, in shops, anywhere where you need people to just stop a minute and give you a minute. So it's just a minute of patience, and that was designed by our participants initially just for them to use in Belfast, and it's proved so successful. We have about 95,000 jam card users now across the UK and Ireland, and actually wider afield. And what it goes to show is it's for anybody that has a hidden disability or communication issue, where just that point of contact, you get so worried about getting it right that you get so stressed that you don't do it. And that's part of the inclusion initiative. So JAM really has rolled out. We now the social enterprise model is businesses pay to become JAM card friendly, and anybody who requires a JAM card can get one for free. And we have about 3,500 businesses paying to be JAM card friendly now, and lots of exciting new ones coming online. But that idea of that gives us an introduction into the Republic of Ireland. And I suppose what we're interested in, what people seem to be interested in, is the model that we have that's around moving significant numbers of disabled people into work. Really moving that dial. We have a plan to support 600 people into paid work over the next 2 years. We're wanting to really scale that up. And then I get a challenge back when people say, I know, but are they, do they stay in work? Is it quality? And we have a target to have 85% retention. So people will still be in the job after 6 months, which I would challenge any mainstream program to have that kind of retention rate. So I think what people are interested in is the commerciality piece along with the jobs outcome, but also focusing on the participants. So I've had lots of interesting conversations where people think, is that model transferable to other groups who may be marginalised? And what could we do together? Because I am an entrepreneur. I'm just thinking, well, as we start to look, we hope to have 2 new loaf sites in the Republic in the next 2 years. We want to have a full employment programme operating there, supporting people. I'm thinking, well, I have to employ people. So where will my diverse workforce come from? And I don't, so I'm looking at all the other, faces around the conversation, and I'm thinking, like, what could we do around that? And I'm thinking the need is so big. We